Now we will move on to the engineering phase. Within the engineering phase, as I discussed earlier, there will be architectural design, there will be structural design, there will be interior design, and finally we will have the MEP design. So if we look upon the architectural concept design, the architectural concept design is the first activity in the engineering phase, because all the other types of design, including the structural design, interior design, MEP works, are all based upon the architectural concept design and the architectural schematic design, since they give the gist or the idea about what the project actually will look like. So architectural concept design is directly connected with the project start activity, and then we will have the architectural schematic design. The architectural schematic design is obviously connected once the architectural concept design has been submitted and approved by the client. Then we will move on to the schematic design, then there is the detailed design, and finally we have the tender package for the architectural design, that will be on the basis of which we will carry out the bidding phase of the contract. Then there is structural concept design. The structural concept design is started once the architectural concept design has been submitted and approved by the client. So here you can see that the predecessor of the set activity is the architectural concept design. The structural schematic design will be initiated once the architectural concept design, the structural concept design has been submitted and approved. Then we will move on to the structural detailed design, and finally we have the tender package. Now you will be wondering as to how I have determined these durations. Now the durations are basically the amount of time that is required to create these designs, and this depends upon the level of the difficulty or the level of approvals that are required. Here you can see that the more time is required for the architectural design, detailed design, compared to the structural detailed design, because more time is required by the architect to create the architectural detailed design, since it contains many minute details. Now, if we go to the interior concept design, the interior concept design is started at a later stage of the project. Why? Because in the start of the project, we do not require the explicit interior details, because the work or the grey works can be initiated on the basis of the structural design and the architectural design. So the interior concept design is connected with the tender package of the architectural design, and then we will move on and forth. And by 9th November 2021 we will have the detailed interior design as well as the tender package for the interior design. Now the MEP is a huge department and contains multiple services, so I have broken down the MEP design into the electrical and the ELV phase, the HVAC phase, the plumbing phase, etc. So the electrical and ELV works will start with the creation of the schematic design for the low voltage electrical works, the extra low voltage electrical works, and then there is the electrical design. Then we'll move on to the detailed design for the electrical works, the detailed design for the low voltage and the BTD, the detailed design for the ELV including the fire alarm system, the data system, the public address system, and finally we move on to the tendering phase. Then we have the HVAC design, and finally we have the plumbing design. So the next WBS that I will be discussing is the tendering and the contract award phase. So there will be three different types of contract awards in this particular project. There will be grey works tendering and contract award, there will be MEP tendering and contract award, and then we will have the finishing works tendering and contract award. So within the grey works tendering and contract award, we will the first activity is the preparation of the bid documents, and that is connected to the completion of the tender package for the architectural design and the structural design. Basically, the grey works contractor will be given the domain of structural works, plaster works, block masonry works, and screed works, and all of this are completely contained in the tender package for the architectural design and the tender package for the structural design, and on the basis of which we will be going forward to the creation of the bid documents. Then we will move on to the bidding process, that is the negotiated bidding. Since this is a private project, there will be no open competitive bidding, and we will be following negotiated bidding. And finally we will have the contract award. Same procedure goes for the MEP works. Here you can see that the preparation of the bid documents for the MEP works is connected to the completion of the tender package for the electrical works, HVAC works, and the plumbing works. And here for the finishing works, the tender package, the bid documents are connected with the preparation of the tender package for the finishing works. Now we will move on to the execution phase. So once the contract has been awarded to the has been awarded to the graveworks contractor, it will be mobilized once the excavation phase has been completed. So the excavation phase will be carried out prior to the contract award of the graveworks. So excavation phase 1 is directly connected to the project start as well as the approval of the architectural concept design and the structural concept design, since all the excavation works will be based upon a concept design. So here you can see that the excavation phase is divided into three different activities at different levels. The excavation phase takes approximately about 100 days for this particular project, depending upon the amount of quantities. Now you will be again wondering as to how I have determined this duration. Now this duration is determined by calculating the total amount of excavation that is required for the set project in terms of meter cube or CFT, that is the cubic foot, and then we will determine the productivity of a certain excavator within a certain day, and then we will know the amount or the number of excavators or the number of machinery that is deployed for the excavation phase. And once we have the productivity, the number of excavators and the excavation machinery and the total quantity that needs to be excavated, we can determine the duration. The duration is equal to the total amount or the total amount of soil that needs to be excavated divided by the productivity into the number of excavators and the excavation machinery that is deployed. Then we will have the structural phase. Now the structural phase is divided into the foundation works, the substructural works, and the superstructural works. The foundation works will include the raft foundation. Then we will have the substructural works that include all the structural works below the ground level, that is 0, and then we have the superstructural works that will include all the structural activities above the ground floor. So here you can see the first we will carry out dressing, leveling and surveying once the excavation phase has been completed. Then we will move on to the placement of the first layer of the PCC and the second layer of PCC along with the termite application as well as the waterproofing. Then we'll move on to the steel fixing of the raft, formwork fixing of the raft and the concreting of the raft. Now you can see that once the first layer, once the dressing leveling has been completed, only then can we start the PCC layer. So this is connected by an FS relationship, that is finish to start relationship. And steel fixing is connected with an SS relationship with a lag of 14 days. Now why is this case? Because first layer PCC and second layer PCC can be placed in certain portions. Now once we have completed certain amount of portion, we can move forward with the steel fixing of the raft. So this is connected with an SS relationship with a 14 days lag, because 14 days lag will give us room to complete certain portion of area with the placement of the first layer PCC and the second layer PCC. And then we will move on to the formwork fixing of the raft. And finally we have the concreting of raft. The concreting of raft is connected to the formwork fixing of raft with an FS relationship, because concreting can only be started once the formwork fixing has been completed. Then we will move on to the substructural works. This will include the steel fixing of the columns and the shear walls that can be initiated only when the raft has been completely poured. So it is connected with an FS relationship. Steel fixing of retaining wall will be carried out in parallel to the steel fixing of columns and shear walls, because both these vertical elements need to be completed for the concrete pouring, formwork fixing and steel fixing of the roof slab. Then we will have the formwork fixing of the columns and the shear walls. Now the formwork fixing of the columns and shear wall is connected with an SS relationship to the steel fixing of the columns and shear walls with a lag of 5 days. Why? Because once a certain amount of columns have been have their reinforcement completed, we can initiate formwork fixing from one particular site. Also, concrete pouring can also be carried out with an SS relationship, because once we have completed the formwork fixing of certain amount of columns, we can initiate concrete pouring of columns. Same methodology goes for the formwork fixing of the retaining walls and the concrete pouring of retaining walls. And slab formwork can obviously be initiated once a certain amount of retaining wall and certain amount of columns and shear walls have been poured. So we can initiate the slab formwork. So this here you can see that this set activity is connected with both the concrete pouring of columns and concrete pouring of retaining walls with an SS relationship with a lag of 3 days. Then we will move on to the slab steel fixing, and finally we have the concrete pouring of the basement to roof slab at an elevation of -30 feet. Same procedure goes for the basement 1 and the lower ground floor.